Hello, and welcome to Wide Day's Local Heroes, celebrating individuals working behind the scenes to nurture and promote great talent in Scotland. My name is Rachel Newton. I am a singer, harpist and composer, and my guest today is Fiona Dalgetty, who is the Chief Executive at the Gaelic arts organisation Fèis Rois. Fèis Rois enable people of all ages to access, participate in and enjoy the traditional arts and Gaelic language through a diverse programme of activities that take place in Ross-and-Cromarty and across Scotland and indeed across the world, which we'll talk about later on. Fiona was named in the 2018 BBC Radio 4 Women's Hour Power List and inducted by the Saltire Society as one of 10 outstanding women in Scotland in 2019. Fiona steered the ship at Fèis Rois for over 10 years, and in that time she's grown the organisation to have an international reach whilst ensuring its roots are very firmly placed in Ross-shire. She supported countless musicians along the way, including myself. Fiona and I were both participants at the Fèis together when we were very wee, and I've been lucky enough to be employed by Fiona on countless occasions as a tutor and as a performer as part of Fèis Rois. So Fiona Dalgetty, welcome.
Thank you. What an introduction, Rachel. Thank you very much.
I was just thinking about that, the Women's Hour Power List. I remember listening to your interview on Women's Hour and thinking, oh my goodness, I know someone that's on Women's Hour.
Oh, that was a really lovely time. Yeah.
Amazing. So yeah, we're going to talk about all sorts of things today, but my first port of call was going to be to ask you, go right back to the start and to ask you how you first got into music.
Wow. I'm from a really big family, and not many people played music in the family, but it was always around. So I remember just so much music in the car, in the house, and my great granny, we used to go to her house every Sunday, and Robbie Shepherd would be on the radio and there'd be music and soup and scones. So yeah, from being in the car with mum and dad, who were big fans of Genesis and the Eagles, and trad music at Granny's house, and yeah, it was kind of all around me. And I was a really keen Highland dancer when I was little, and it was really Fèis Rois that got me into playing music. I remember going to my first residential course up in Ullapool when I was in primary 4 as a keen Highland dancer and having a shot of the fiddle for the first time. And yeah, got the bug, kept playing.
Oh, yeah, very similar to my own path. Bit of Robbie Shepherd in there, love it. So you attended the Fèis from a young age, and were you always did you always know that you were going to be involved in music kind of as a career, or did you have a kind of different path as you went through kind of school and things like that?
Oh, completely did not always know I was going to be involved in music at all. And I think it's really hard, isn't it, when you're a 17-year-old at school, like being asked, what are you going to do? And I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. And I can't say that I've taken a strategic route to the job that I'm in. It's just, you go on a sort of journey, don't you? And opportunities arise and things. So no, I didn't always know I was going to be involved in music at all. Although it's always been there, and the journey into this job in particular has been an interesting one, because I was a participant aged 8 and have kind of done every role in the organisation, and came back in 2009 to lead Fèis Rois, which is a huge privilege, really. It's our 35th anniversary this year as an organisation.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's such a lovely thing about the Fèis. We'll maybe talk about that later, but that kind of idea of coming through from being young to sort of, and then always just being involved. And it's really great that the chief exec is one of those people. It's fantastic. So what was your path then? I mean, what did you do when you left school?
When I left school, so I was a fiddle player, really keen on playing the fiddle, and wasn't sure if I wanted to go and study music, and did quite well at school and had a place at Edinburgh University to go and study law and French. And I think in my heart knew I definitely didn't want to study law and French. So I took a year out and went to teach English in China, and got really into everything about the Chinese language and culture. And while I was there, kind of realised that I knew very little about my own local culture. So I came home from China And well, I remember phoning my mum and saying, I don't think I want to go to study law. And she was like, me and Dad have been waiting for you to tell us that. And so I had another year out, and during that year out, my predecessor, Rita Hunter, gave me a job 3 days a week, just helping with some admin at Fèis Rois. And I worked with Brian Beattie, who was setting up his creative company that year, the other 2 days a week, and reapplied to Edinburgh University to study Chinese and took Gaelic as an outside subject. And then eventually graduated with flipping it over the other way around, with Gaelic taking the lead. So I studied Celtic studies. And the whole time I was at university, I was playing and teaching fiddle for the Scots Music Group in Edinburgh and being involved in that scene.
That's really interesting. I love that point about kind of going into such a different culture and then that actually kind of making you aware of your own in a different way. That's definitely something that I could chime with as well. And I've heard other people feel like that, but I love that.
Wow. Especially when you're so young as well, and yeah, took that journey across the world to then reconnect and
yeah. While you were over in China, did you get involved in music over there at all, or any sort of the local culture?
Hugely, not massively, I have to say. It was, when I reflect on that, I was 17 and it was like pre-FaceTime, Skype, all that. I've got a shoebox of letters, that's how old I am. People wrote to me, we wrote back and forth, and I phoned home once a week on a Sunday. So yeah, it was quite an amazing thing to do. And then I was living in the compound at the school and teaching, so it was quite intense, really, like with one other person from the UK that I was paired up with. So it was quite an experience. But I did have my fiddle with me, and I did play a bit when I was out there.
And you say that you had this sort of flip when you came back to sort of studying Gaelic and tradition and sort of Celtic studies. Was that a kind of gradual flip, or was there any sort of thought process behind that kind of change?
Yeah, I guess there was playing the fiddle and the repertoire that goes with that. It was always in my mind, the connection to place and language and tune titles, and I guess it's a bit like Keen Hill Walkers, like all the names of the hills. And I knew that I really needed to explore that a bit more. And my great granny, who I mentioned, had a big influence on my life and the whole family. And she moved up to Easter Ross probably in the 50s from Aberdeenshire. And the farm that they moved to work on, there were people still speaking Gaelic on the farm in Easter Ross at that time. So she learned Gaelic, and I think did higher Gaelic in the 1970s at a night class. So I was always really amazed by that as well.
And you mentioned Rita Hunter and Brian Beattie and people that sort of supported you along the way. Was there any other kind of figures like mentors or anything like that at that point, when you were just finishing university that were important to your journey?
I think musically, I was so lucky. I grew up in Easter Ross and went to school in Tain, at Tain Royal Academy, where there was an amazing music department led by Catherine Wilkie. And the strings instructor, who's still the strings instructor there, Debbie Ross, is just amazing and has taught so many people and into so many types of music. So it wasn't, you weren't just going through grades and studying classical music. There was a really big traditional music group there. We played all kinds of things. So definitely Debbie and Catherine were really influential. And
you had this job at the Fèis, did you say 3 days a week when you left?
Yep.
And then what was your sort of path from there to becoming the chief executive? What jobs did you go through?
Well, yeah. So that was before I went to university that I did some admin, and then studied in Edinburgh for 4 years, and would often, like you did, come back and be a house parent and supervise at the residential courses that we have at Fèis Rois. So every Easter, we would normally have around 100 primary school pupils come and stay for a week. And like me, aged 8, quite often it's their first time away from home, apart from maybe staying with granny, and the first time to try lots of different musical instruments and just have a really great time. So yeah, I was a house parent, supervisor, and then we'd come back and be invited to then teach some of the classes and workshops and be on the tutor team. And we had many great summers, Rachel, on the Ceilidh Trail.
We did.
Which is still running. So last year was the 21st anniversary of that project, which is a professional development opportunity for young people thinking about performing professionally, but also bringing really authentic, high quality music to places we know visitors will be in the summer. So I coordinated that project when I was a student. That was my summer job for a few years. Yeah, lots of different roles at the Fèis before this one.
Those were good times. Those were really good times. It was pretty much a dream job as a young musician, that the Ceilidh Trail, just getting to kind of, I think what's so great about it is that you get to learn so much about performing and setting up a gig, you know, all of the, just everything involved in sort of touring in this really safe environment of the Fèis, you know, holding you kind of holding you together. And it's just, yeah, what a brilliant summer job. I just loved my time doing that when I was younger. It was so good.
It's a great project. It's so intense when you think about it. So we audition young people aged 16 to 25 in February, and I now place them into 3 bands with 5 people in each band. And then they don't meet each other again until July, and they have this really intense residential rehearsal week, and then tour for a month. And we try and make sure they experience, as you know, every aspect of touring. It could be big gigs at festivals, corporate gigs, pub sessions, but also that responsibility for helping to market the gigs and set up the PA and take down the PA and do a raffle in a village hall and just anything you can think of.
The all-important raffle.
All-important raffle.
The highlight of any Highland gig. I suppose the Ceilidh Trail is quite a good example of how things have developed since your time. I mean, over 10 years that you've been working as chief executive, and you know, such an incredible sort of concept, the Ceilidh Trail, which I know was around long before your time. But yeah, it's a good example of how things have developed, because certainly when we first started on the Ceilidh Trail, it was, you know, a tour of the Highlands. You maybe do some Highland shows, some Ceilidhs sessions, and now, as you mentioned, it includes festivals, it includes touring across, you know, to Australia, all sorts of places. Could you tell us a bit more about how that sort of developed?
Yeah, I guess the first year I was in this role, there was something like 8 or 10 young people in the Ceilidh Trail, but they were just from one big band, and they, like you say, they toured around Rossshire for 3 weeks in the summer, which was really great, and lots of amazing places and venues. And then it kind of struck me that model had been adopted by some of the local community Fèis across Scotland. So as well as Fèis Rois, there's the umbrella organisation Fèis and Gaelic, who support more than 40 community Fèis run by volunteers, promoting traditional music in their communities. So about half a dozen of those communities had set up very local Ceilidh Trail opportunities for their young people. And then I was thinking about the rest of the country, where young people couldn't really access this opportunity. And one particular summer, we had something like 50 applications for the places that I had available. And it was being driven by the music school at Plockton, which is in Ross and Cromarty, but has young people from across the country. So young people from Rossshire who'd been on the Ceilidh Trail previously were telling their pals, this is brilliant, you have to apply. And then we had this influx very suddenly of young people from Edinburgh and Glasgow and Stirling and the borders who all wanted to join in. So I was able to get some funding from Creative Scotland to create a national project. So this is when, and also that reducing it into a bigger project with smaller, more kind of realistic sized bands, so that everybody had a clear role in the band, to have space and to be able to develop. So that's kind of how the national thing started. And then we've developed lots of international partnerships, so some quite long-standing ones with, like you mentioned, Australia, so the National Celtic Festival in Australia. We've been working with them for nearly 10 years now. And closer to home, Cambridge Folk Festival and Sidmouth Folk Festival, we've got relationships with them as well. So yeah, the 3 Ceilidh Trail groups all get to play at a major festival as part of the tour.
That's brilliant. I love that. Yeah, so the international partnership thing, that's kind of another big strand that you've developed, I think, in your time as chief executive. Could you tell me a bit more about that? I know that there's been a few projects, haven't there, with various organisations around the world, I should say.
Yeah, we've got lots of and really different projects as well. So there's a really lovely exchange project with the obvious link of the Scottish diaspora in Australia. And I work quite closely with Una, who runs that festival. So that's a really nice exchange where we've brought young musicians playing Scottish music in Australia over here, and we've gone over there and they've collaborated and worked on various projects together. And that's been amazing. And just introducing those young people who, some of them are not so young anymore, they're in their 30s, and they've made collaborations that lasted and played on each other's professional albums and all kinds of things, and gone back and performed as artists in their own right, and toured in Australia, which is great. And then another example, we work with an organisation in Romania who are based in Bucharest, who work with people who have hearing impairments and sight impairments. So that's more of a kind of community music based project, and we've taken musicians out to Bucharest twice a year for many years to work at the School for the Blind and School for the Deaf, and to play at a big burn supper for the great and the good to raise money for that charity. And that's always a mind-blowing kind of trip for emerging young musicians to go on, the contrast between the work that they're doing during the day and the event that they're playing at on the Saturday night is huge. And then also, I guess, the last few years we've been involved in programming Scotland at Lorient in Brittany, which is a huge Celtic festival. So 2019 would have been the last time we were able to do that, and we took about 35 artists over for 10 days to play there, which is always amazing.
Wow. I can't. When I want to ask you about what the Fèis, what the Fèis does, it's just so, there's just so much, there's so many different things. I was going to ask you about, and this is something that I've been lucky enough to take part in as a performer, but about your commission work. You've commissioned people to write music.
Yeah.
You know,
I guess the whole thing about the Fèis is like you and I, isn't it? So 35 years this year, and that kind of ladder of progression, or the cycle that people can, everybody talks about the Fèis family, and you can't really leave. Once you're in, you're part of the family, and there's always another opportunity of some kind. And for me, that was part of that whole thing of young people who've grown up coming through our workshops. So we have a weekly classes program after school that some people come along to, from complete beginners through to advanced players, and then they might come to the residential courses that I've spoken about, which are a bit more intense but loads of fun. And then the Ceilidh Trail, when you're 16, you can become part of that professional development opportunity. And then it comes full circle, and lots of people are keen to come on training days to learn how to teach and do some shadow teaching and become tutors on our programs. And some people are maybe not so keen on teaching, or they are, but they also are into writing and composing and arranging. And yeah, we've had a few big commissions. We've often commissioned a tune here and there to commemorate different things or people in the organisation. But 2014, I think, was the first big one that we did, where we commissioned John Somerville to write an album inspired by the voyage of the Hector, which was a ship that left Ullapool in 1773. And I guess going back to that personal journey of my own, it's kind of a piece of local history there that maybe lots of people in the community are not aware of, and using music as a way of sharing our local history. So that commission was really well received. And a couple of years later, in 2016, we commissioned Lauren McCall to write an album inspired by the life and prophecies of the brand Seer, which you were involved in. And at the moment, we've just commissioned Ian Fraser, fabulous fiddle player, who taught at the very first adults course that we ran in 1990. So to mark 30 years of that event, Ian has written an album that's inspired by the 3 places that event has taken place in over the last 30 years. So it was initially in Dingwall, and it moved to Gairloch, and in most recent years it's been held in Ullapool. So he's been exploring the geology and people and stories and songs of those communities to come up with an album, which we are recording next month. And like many things, has been delayed because of the pandemic many, many times, but we're finally recording it next month.
Finally getting there.
Yeah.
And another aspect of the Fèis, I know that's really important to you and to the Fèis as a wider thing, is to sort of reach people that might not have the opportunity otherwise to learn music or to play music with other people. Could you tell me a bit more about the various projects that you've got on the go that do that?
Yeah, there's lots of work around that. I was touching on the adult Fèis there that I've just spoken about. It really struck me when I started in post that we only worked with adults 3 days a year, that May long weekend, which was our big flagship event, this festival in Ullapool. It was a tuition festival with more than 250 people coming to the workshops for 3 days on this 3-day long course, with, you know, a big fringe programme around it with gigs and talks and recitals and sessions. And but that was it around the adult learning part of the organisation. So we've really grown that since 2011, and we now have a year-round lifelong learning programme for adults in the community, and adults of all ages, well into their 80s, come along to regular workshops. And I think in terms of creating community and friendship and reducing isolation, and that's a really lovely programme. And we do a lot of work with care experienced young people in the Highlands. So we have a bespoke programme there where we'll arrange one-on-one tuition for young people and encourage them to come along and enjoy part of the core programme if they feel able to. That's a big part of the work that we do. And also supporting artists with disabilities to engage in our core programme. So one of the things I'm doing at the moment is programming Under Canvas, the festival in partnership with Eden Court. So there's a beautiful stretch tent on the lawn at Eden Court with 2 bands playing every day, 5 days a week for 3 months. So it's quite extraordinary, but we have a really wide range of artists having the opportunity to play there.
Amazing. It's so great you're able to reach all these people, because I know how important it is, how important it was for me as a young person. Like, I don't think I would be playing music if it wasn't, you know, professionally, if it wasn't for the Fèis and for that experience. And I think also as a tutor, what I've seen of both the kids that come along and, you know, and see other kids playing music and seeing that it's something they could do, but also the adult weekend at the Fèis. You know, it just always strikes me how it's actually really scary to go as an adult to go and learn an instrument, you know, in that environment. It's quite a vulnerable thing to put yourself into, especially if you're kind of going along on your own. And it's just always amazing to see how much that means to people. So yeah, no, it's just great. It's just great. Waxing lyrical. You mentioned, you sort of mentioned a little bit, you touched on it about COVID. And it's always the unavoidable topic for discussion at the moment, isn't it? But I'd be really interested to hear, and I'm sure the audience would be interested to hear a bit more about how the Fèis, you know, just talking about the way that you've talked about all the things that you do. It's very, very much community and people being together, making music and things like that. And I know that you've done so much to kind of work around the sort of lockdown and COVID situation that we've been in. But could you tell us a bit more about what the Fèis did when it all went to pot?
What an 18 months, honestly. Yeah, it's been just unbelievable, hasn't it? Yeah, where to start, Rachel, on that one? It's been really challenging, but it's also thrown up all kinds of opportunities, and I can genuinely say we have never been busier as an organisation. And in particular, I'm just in awe of our education manager, Rachel Duff, who has managed to continue all of our work with schools over the past 18 months. And that has involved so much pivoting and replanning and all sorts. So we work with all of the primary schools in Dumfries and Galloway, and we run an education project with Aberdeenshire Council, and we work in partnership with Fèis and Gael and High Life Highland to work in all of the primary schools in Highland Council area as well. So obviously the young people were at home in full lockdown, and then they were back to school, and then we were locked down again, and then we were back to school. So we have a team of about 50 freelance musicians who deliver this work, usually sort of maybe a term. Once a week they'll visit these schools and do a term's worth of delivery with a class teacher and a whole class making music. And yeah, so that had to happen digitally. So sometimes it would involve musicians being beamed in on a smart board to the classroom and the whole class and the teacher. And then it got to the stage when every single pupil in Highland use G Suite. In other areas, they've been using Microsoft Teams, so that's not even been straightforward. It's not the same thing each time, but they've all had individual accounts and been able to log in and have a live music making experience in real time with artists. So that was an extraordinary undertaking for a couple of hundred schools, so thousands of pupils. And what else have we done? We've done lots of different things. So last year we partnered with Nature Scot, formerly SNH, Scottish Natural Heritage, to run a competition inviting musicians working in any genre of music to compose a new piece of music inspired by one of 10 national nature reserves. And we had an amazing response to that, with about 150 entries. So that was an absolute joy, actually, to listen to all of that new music, and really difficult to select 10 winners of that. So the Fèis Rois YouTube channel, there's a beautiful playlist with all of that music. Because when things eased a bit last summer, all of the winning artists then visited the sites with a filmmaker and made a film to go with their music as well, which was really beautiful. And one of the other projects that we did over the past year, just recognising how difficult the year was for new mums who didn't have any antenatal classes and couldn't meet with their friends or go to all the baby groups you might go to. So we ran a project that was in partnership with Carnegie Hall called the Lullaby Project, and that's been really beautiful. My colleague TJ has been leading on that, where we pair up new mothers with musicians to write their own personal lullabies for their baby, but they become a cohort, so they're connected with 8 or 10 other mums, and there's been a lot of cake being dropped off on people's doorsteps, and it's been lovely music and cake and on Zoom. And I guess we've been really grateful to Creative Scotland and the Scottish Government for the COVID recovery funds. So we've got 3 new projects running at the moment. The biggest one is the Culture Collective. So I should probably say nothing we do in Fèis Rois is in isolation. We work collaboratively all the time with other organisations, as you're probably picking up on. So we're working with 5 other organisations across the Highlands as a consortium on this new project, where we've just employed 5 full-time artists and residents for 15 months and a new project manager to work with communities across the region that have been impacted by COVID. So that's going to be really exciting. August is an R&D month, and they'll start delivery in September.
Wow, so it's not been an idle time for the Fèis over lockdown. That's for sure.
Definitely not. I keep waiting for the quiet moment, but it hasn't come yet.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of people in your sort of core team already, but it'd be interesting just to hear. I know that there's obviously the wider, tutor team. There's musicians, there's volunteers, and but you've got your sort of core team in the office, I suppose.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit more about how does the ship kind of who's sailing, who's involved,
who's aboard?
Who's aboard?
It's a really small team for all that we do. There's 5 of us. So we have an office and finance manager, Lorraine, who started with us in January, and she'd worked for the organisation previously. So our office manager, Marion, retired after 12 years with us, and it's lovely to bring Lorraine back. So she's back with us. And we have an education manager, Rachel, and a community engagement officer, TJ, and a creative producer, Christian, and me. But yeah, really, I guess we're so reliant. All of what we do is delivered by freelance artists. So I think in the last 18 months, it'd be fair to say the focus of the 5 of us shifted a little bit from the community to the artists. So we've been working really hard to support freelance artists through this unbelievably difficult time. So yeah, during the pandemic in the last financial year, we managed to pay around 200 freelance artists a total of about £300,000 for working on different projects at a time when many other arts organisations had to close and put people on furlough. We didn't need to use the furlough system, so we were able to keep going and do as much as we could.
Wow, well, I know it's much appreciated by the artists in question, including me. Yeah, I think just it's people like yourself, you know, and organisations like the Fèis that have kind of found new and inventive ways of doing things over this time and managed to keep employing freelance artists, that's really made such a huge difference. Because I think as much as musicians are kind of trying to find their own sort of inventive ways of doing things, I think it's definitely been nice to just be asked to do something by someone else.
When you're saying about new and inventive ways of doing things, it was really rapid. Actually, we put our adult Fèis weekend online in May, so it was about 6 weeks after lockdown. We did this online festival, really, with 3 concerts and a television programme and 12 workshops. And it was just extraordinary. I think because at that point it was all very new and people were locked down completely at home and nobody really knew what was going on. I didn't really know what I was doing when I was organising it, but the response was amazing. And we had something like 2,500 people watching live and 50,000 people viewing it over the 14 days that we kept it up online, the content, and folk from 50 different countries getting involved, which has been amazing. So something we're thinking about going forward is how we keep the kind of relationships that we're building with wider international audiences than we would normally have.
That's really interesting. I think a lot of people have been thinking about, well, this is actually an opportunity to open up into people who wouldn't otherwise be able to access things, whether it's because they're on the other side of the world or just unable to, you know, leave the house easily for whatever reason. It has been quite an opportunity for that, hasn't it, over this time? Definitely. Yeah. I think what I noticed with, you know, the online sort of Fèis events that I've been to is, people that kind of, there's still that sense of community where people feel like they can kind of just like be watching the music, but also kind of chatting together on the chat or whatever, which has been been amazing.
The concerts that we've live streamed have been amazing in the chat. Like when you come off it afterwards, and there's like 1,700 comments in the comments thread, and it's all people catching up, and that's really lovely, that sense of community. Because
there's been some weddings and proposals and all sorts of things at the Fèis over the years, hasn't there? People that have met.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's quite amazing.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think it means a lot to a lot of people, doesn't it? What would you say was your, you know, of all the things that that the Fèis is involved in and you're doing, what are you most proud of, I suppose?
That's a really hard question. I think I am most proud of the widening the access to the Fèis and having that broader involvement and reach for people of all ages and regardless of if you have a disability or you know, just removing the barriers that might have been there previously. It's lovely to see people integrating in the community.
Yeah, it's really great to see that. And what about you? What's your, I mean, I suppose in COVID times it's different, but usually, you know, what does your day-to-day kind of work life look like at the Fèis? I take it it's a lot of emails, a lot of communicating.
That's an even harder question to kind of answer. It's genuinely no day is ever the same. And staying on top of the admin is really tricky. I think in all seriousness, before the pandemic, I was already really conscious of the effect of 10 plus years of austerity in the arts. So we're a really lean team and we genuinely could do with more core funding to have a slightly bigger team to help with the workload. It's a lot. The admin and project management is a lot after years of budget cuts. And that is a challenge. But yeah, no day's ever the same. And yeah, it is really interesting. And there's always, because I'm actually in the office today, we're still shut, but I tend to come in like a day or two a week and pick up the mail and check that everything's okay. But in more normal times, we'd have people dropping in, we'd have tutors or participants popping in and lots of different meetings with different people. We'd have some young people coming in after school and using the space. We've got some mobile recording equipment that they might come in and use after school. And yeah, I miss that. I miss that kind of connection with people. I think we all do, don't we?
definitely. I don't know about you, but I find working from home extremely difficult. I just can't. Yeah, I think that being in another space helps so much. And like you say, just having people popping in and just even for a quick chat makes such a difference.
Yeah, my kids are 4 and 5, so working from home was really tricky. I kind of look back on the original lockdown and think, how did we manage?
I'm not sure how you managed to do that.
Jen may have been involved.
I don't blame you. Do you still find that you get to, play music yourself often with the job?
Do you know, I think that is a frustration, isn't it, in some ways, of as soon as you get into any kind of event management role, your own music kind of slips, doesn't it? But I'm really conscious of it. And actually, that's been one nice thing about working from home, is that when the kids went back to school and nursery and David was back at work, it was just me in the house. So I would deliberately have my fiddle out so that I would be working and doing some emails, and then I'd play a few tunes. So I probably played a bit more in the last year than I have done before. So I might be taking my fiddle into the office when we come back.
Nice, definitely. And what about the future plans for the Fèis? I know you talked a wee bit about the next commission and things like that, but have you got anything else that you can share with us? There might be some to be announced, but
yeah, we're still at the to be announced stage, but I mean the real focus now is how we get back to face-to-face work again, looking at the new academic year and tentatively planning for community workshops and residential courses before Christmas, we hope, and that feels really exciting to be able to do that and bring people back together.
Yes, I personally cannot wait, and it's great that the Under Canvas just sounds like it's been fantastic at Eden Court, and it's great that there has been some live music and it's starting to keep back in.
So well received. I think people are just really, really ready for it, and it's a really safe, beautiful space to be doing that in.
Oh, well, yeah. Thank you so much, Fiona, for all you do on behalf of myself and all the musicians that you support with the Fèis. I have like I say, a soft spot for Fèis Rois, having been myself a participant since I was about 8 years old. And my mum actually runs or started up the Fèis in Edinburgh. There, as Fiona mentioned, there are Fèis all over the country. So do check out your local Fèis wherever you are in Scotland. Thank you so much, Fiona, for chatting to me. If you want to find out more about the work of Fèis Rois, visit www.feisrois.org. You'll see that on your screen now. And remember to check out this year's other local heroes, Soma Quality Recordings. And you can also check out last year's local heroes, the interviews with Tom Ketley from The Fly and Lisa Whittock from Active Events. So you can check those out online. Thanks so much to Wide Days for having us, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.